Good evening, and I want to talk this evening about my first, um, my new book, which I just submitted to uh, for review and for to my POD publisher. Do Ask, Do Tell. Title: A Lone Wolf Faces His Own Wounds from Erratic Liberalism, which goes in with Join or Die. That's Join or Die. That's kind of a mysterious or iconoclastic title. Is that I'm going to cover gender identity, age verification, freedom of reach, and general instability. I tell you, the cover is kind of blue and white this time. It would be the fourth book, and the back in you'll remember that the third book was this one. Speech is a fundamental right. Being listened to is a privilege. And I talked a lot in that book about what my own responsibilities are as a kind of lone wolf that's kind of stands outside the groups and maybe somewhat privileged in many ways, but what my own obligations to society is, since I am somewhat non-normative, ought to be in a larger context. I actually talk about it that way. And so at the time, at the time, I had not I had not seriously thought very much about the transgender issue. And it was 2013. It had started to be talked about, but it didn't become it didn't become a subject of a lot of attention until maybe 2018 or so. And it wasn't until after the pandemic was coming down, that it really the what seemed like the excesses when the effect on women, biological women, and the objections to trans activism that you're hearing about all the time, when that started getting more attention, particularly as the pandemic wound down. And at that time, I realized, I had an old book and I hadn't even covered this topic at all. So that was one thing. But the other thing I was very concerned about is that the general way that we speak online, it's changed. With it. First of all, we basically had search engines through almost 2010, 2011. We had MySpace, but generally most of it was straightforward search engine, and a lot of content was offered for free. And then it started in the 2010s to become more important to make businesses out of your internet um, activity, and YouTube became popular, and YouTube channels became commercialized, and it was important to be starting to become more important to become commercially viable, maybe become a legitimate business, be more professional than I was. I was giving away a lot of content for free. And in the 2000s, maybe 2011, before 2011, 2012, before the smartphone started changing everything, um, that was pretty effective. I was quite effective with my original issue, which was gays in the military, and how that the issue of intimacy, forced intimacy in closed spaces, related to my experience at William and Mary back in 1961, when I was thrown out for saying I was a latent homosexual, was very similar. And actually, the whole issue of intimacy in other spaces today, now the transgender issue in some of its more extreme formulations, has gotten restrooms involved, even in schools and locker rooms, and a variety of things. The whole idea of whether biological sex should be that important in our society has become very important. One of the important influences on this will be in chapter 3, which is I talk about the the Yoga principles, and which were a set of about 38 principles between 2007 and 2017 that talked about both gender identity and sexual orientation, and went into great detail of how states should go and how countries and states should protect those rights. And then, of course, our legal system, um, our legal system is primarily trying to. Our legal system kind of combines biological sex with gender identity and sexual orientation, and gender identity has a more circular definition. It kind of crept into our culture and sort of got a definition by tradition gradually, which I think the whole point of this, although people make a lot of saying that they really are this other gender rather than their biological gender, and that make it an essentialist argument. The real point is that when people are classified by biological sex and compared, along a normal distribution, compared to each other along according to these norms, some people turn out, are treated better than other people and come across better than other people, and so if you didn't use sex at all and as an identifier, a lot of people use something else that was more aligned with a person's performativities, as Judith Butler used to say, or polarities. That was the other thing I had talked about in my earlier books, the Paul Rosenfeld's polarities, which were tools for personal growth at that time, but became elaborated with Butler, and now it seems like they're supposed to be identifiers. Well, if they did become identifiers, that would make life better for a lot of people, because they wouldn't be being compared all the time to people who were more normative. And so I talk about that a lot, and the idea of your own self-concept, and whether it's important to be normative or not to fit into society's norms, we need to have 80 or 85% of people able to raise families a traditional way. And if we're not doing a very good job of that, we're not doing a very good job of employing young men, AI, all kinds of things are becoming very disruptive. So I talk about all these things. I also talk about self-publishing because I did it in a very unusual way. I didn't do it very professionally. I haven't sold a lot of copies of my books, but I often gave away a lot for free because I had income from other sources and could inject my thoughts. But then that might be unfair to people who have to do this for a living. And yet at the same time, particularly before 2008, our economy had turned into just who could be the best salesman or who could be the best huckster. The whole sales culture problem got out of hand. And I wasn't participating in that at all. I was doing things my own way, a very simple way of putting my stuff out, which was very effective, particularly before 2011 and 2012, before all the algorithms. And I was quite effective in particularly discussing the gays in the military issue, where the Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed in 2010. But then my way of doing that became more problematic as things changed, and we're more concerned about exposure of minors. Age verification has become a big thing, and whether you really need to be operating a real business that's commercially viable to be able to have a full presence online, whether that'll be something, I think that could be something that becomes required eventually, that people won't be allowed to do things the way I did them. So I talk about that a lot. I talk about some things and what I do is I unpack a lot of things. I unpack the gender identity issue, and I unpack and compare it to the gay issues of the past when we had AIDS as an issue, and when we had, and then what the political dangers of regarding gender identity are now compared to sexual orientation. There still are some issues with sexual orientation that will PrEP remain affordable, for everyone who needs it, for example. So I unpack everything. I also unpack some of the free speech issues, the freedom of reach issues, I call them. And not everything I say is going to be pleasant to hear, because when you unpack it, there are a lot of problems to talk about. And I'm the one that's talking about them, even though I may be perceived as not having my own skin in the game as much as others do, because I'm elderly and have been more immune to these problems that are going on than a lot of other people have been. That it's not fair that I'm the one that's talking about them. I understand that. But that's what I did in this book. And I unpack a lot of things and support them with footnotes and everything and lay it out for you to see all the problems. And I did want to bring the material left from the 2013, 2014 book up to date. Gender identity is one of the big problems, and I think age verification is another, and just the general way we self-publish is still another issue. So I wanted to talk about all those things candidly. I also talk about elections a little bit and about immigrations a little bit, because I had some experience with those. And so that's what the book will be about. And we'll see how it goes and how the promotion will go and exactly how I'm going to handle it as time goes by. But I did want to just let you know about that and just show the cover one more time. There's me and there's the cover. And I do thank you for listening. I do. There's the cover again. I'm having trouble finding the cutoff point. I do thank you for listening.